I believe this, that there are ways for leaders to create evidence, meaningful evidence in an organization behind the sentiment that every organization espouses. Every organization I know of that issues an annual report says our people are our most important resource. But there's no evidence it's true, it's just something we say to each other. So here's a way to know whether it's really true that our people are our most important resource. For the organization to set an aspirational goal that says people who work here will never be hurt at work. You know, so in order to do that, it's not just something to say out of cheerleading or you hope that's how it comes out. There is actually a way to work very close to 0 injuries in the workplace if it's deliberate, and if a leader is present to say, for everyone in the organization, in order for us to achieve this aspirational goal that will never be hurt, everyone has to believe in the goal and has to follow the practices that we know are consistent with people never being hurt at work. We can't do it unless we have 100% buy-in. And then let me fast forward for you a little bit and tell you today, the injury rate in a big industrial place like Alcoa or DuPont or Celanese Chemical, where I'm on the board, the injury rate to people who work in those organizations is 30 times lower, almost 0, 30 times lower than the rate among people who deliver care in American medical institutions, nurses, doctors, technicians, pharmacists. Their injury rate is 30 times higher than it is in a number of places where it's true the human beings are their most important resource. I would submit to you, if people are hurt at work, it's because they're not important. The telltale is they're not really important because there's a mountain of evidence that demonstrates it's possible to be nearly perfect and not hurting people at work. Now again, I would submit to you, unless there is a leader who causes human beings in an organization to share that ambition that we will prove people are really our most important resource by creating the conditions so they never be hurt. Unless that leader is present, you cannot get there. And you know, it is obviously not the only measure of the potential for greatness, but it's one that I like a lot because it's very hard for people to deny the idea that people should not be hurt at work. So, you know, when you start doing this kind of thing and you say to people, we're going to set a goal of people never being hurt at work, and they will say to you, well, we can't afford to do that, right? We can't spend enough money to assure that people have all the safety equipment and protection that they need in order not to be hurt. And then they'll say, we don't have the time to do it. We're going to have to hire hundreds of auditors and observers and safety engineers to make this come true. I mean, it's interesting how much parallelism there is in the reasons why organizations can't achieve or dare not aspire to habitual organizational excellence. They're almost a generic brand, and beginning with the idea inherently that, for example, in the workplace safety, that God intended for us to be hurt. You know, so we have a whole excuse rhetoric. So we call injuries accidents, which means it couldn't have been prevented. So when you set out with leadership ideas to change the characteristics of an organization, you have to be mindful of the language, because the word accident is permissive. Incident suggests you can use analytic skills to figure out how not to have a set of circumstances ever occur again. All right, so I believe there are skills that we need to train people in who are aspirational leaders or who aspire to be leaders. You know, obviously we need to teach them statistics. There are tools that are really valuable. You need to learn statistics. You need to study organizational behavior and see what the literature and the practice had to say about how human beings relate to each other in different circumstances. I would say, you know, especially in the last 40 or 50 years, if you didn't learn enough about information technology to understand the fundamentals and you were in a leadership position, you were at great risk to experts. So, you know, I would give you this idea for those of you who are in the process of becoming leadership material. For all subjects where you're going to have to make decisions, you should learn enough about a subject so you don't have to accept the judgment of a, quote, expert for things that are principle-based. Right, so if you're going to have to spend $1 billion on an information technology system for a big company, in my notion of a leadership, you need to have enough command of the subject that you're not relying on some expert opinion where you just take a pass and say, I hope this turns out right. So that's a challenge for you. There are lots of areas, if you accept this proposition, where you need to be lifelong learners. So, for example, for me, if you're going to be a real leader, you need to understand enough about environmental science to have an informed opinion about issues like global climate change. And it's not okay to get it from U.S. News and World Report. Not to slam U.S. News and World Report, they serve a useful purpose, but that's not my idea of a scientific base for understanding the important issues that you're going to confront, we're confronting now, you're going to confront in your role as a leader going forward. You know, I made a big deal in my interactions this morning of talking about what I believe to be a necessary thing that I think we honestly don't do very well with young people, and that is to help them explore questions of value propositions in a deliberate way. And I mean that at a very basic level. I think if you aspire to be a leader, you need to struggle with yourself what it is you believe is the central tendency of human beings, between being human beings on the one hand being willfully positive and on the other hand in the alternative being willfully negative or uninclined to be cooperative and value driven. Now, the reason I suggest that to you is if you get into a leadership position, the decisions that you make, whether you do this explicitly or not, are underneath it all tied to a set of value decisions that you've made either consciously or unconsciously in your development period. So let me bring this down to a really low practical level. If you believe that in the organization you want to lead, that people are inherently trustworthy and responsible and honest, then you don't have people send their travel receipts to a superior to have the superior attest to their legitimacy before you get paid. Right? So the bills and expenses go directly to the accounting department. They send you a check. If you run an organization that's based on a principle that people are inherently trustworthy, along with this backup proposition that if you find someone that breaks your trust, they're fired. It's not a negotiation or hope you don't do it again. It's an off-on switch. All right, so I'm telling you my view of what to do with that, but I think real people who aspire to be leaders have to go through this calculus for themselves so that when you're confronted with the real life issues that people in leadership positions have to deal with, it's not the first time you've thought about it. So here's an example, what kind of real issues that are out there. And I'm going to make this graphic so it's easy for you to see, hopefully. Let's say you're the head of a large company and you're producing products, and according to the law, one of the byproducts of your manufacturing is what's classified as hazardous waste by the Environmental Protection Agency. And so this quarter, if you dump the hazardous waste in a convenient landfill, you could improve the corporate earnings by $10 million. And there's 100% guarantee that this action will never be discovered. And you personally don't believe there's a great environmental hazard associated with dumping this stuff. All right, so a question for a leader is, if no one will notice and you can improve your profitability by $10 million and you think there's not really much environmental hazard, do you look the other way, or do you even consider looking the other way? I hope you would all say, absolutely not. I don't have that branch on my logic tree. I wouldn't ever consider doing something that is inherently wrong because I could get it away with it and make another $10 million. But I believe real leaders need to think that kind of a proposition through and be prepared for those, what for some people are forks in the road, so that you saw off all those branches that are not value-based. And there are a whole lot of things like that I believe aspiring leaders need to think about and to challenge in the organizations that you may lead someday. So I believe this is work that real leadership work is never over. There's endless opportunity for discovering things that are kind of interlaced into what we accept as this is okay and this is the way the world does things, and to challenge anything and everything that doesn't really meet the standard of aligning human beings and physical resources around value-based ideas.